Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? The NFL league year begins on Wednesday officially, so teams can start signing free agents. The legal tampering period, however, began today, Monday. So you're starting to see a lot of news leaked out there about contracts that have been agreed upon. They can't become official until they sign, but terms and all that sort of stuff, that's happening right now. We knew that defensive line and defensive tackle in particular was going to be a major focus for the New Orleans Saints in this cycle. That has become an absolute dire must. It's no longer a want. It is quite literally the number one priority for the New Orleans Saints moving throughout this offseason now after what happened today. Let's start with the biggest news, and that is David Onyemata. Onyemata, we all know, is a guy who the Saints drafted. He has spent his entire career in New Orleans. You know the backstory. He's from Nigeria, had never seen football until he went to Canada for college. Played there. The Saints liked the skill set, the player. They drafted him, developed him, and now David Onyemata is staying in the NFC South, but he's headed to Atlanta. News from Mike Garafolo that the Falcons and Onyemata agreed to terms, and Schefter followed up with the news that it's a 3-year, $35 million deal with $24.5 million fully guaranteed. So for David Onyemata, this means he reunites with Ryan Nielsen, who is the Saints' defensive line coach, co-DC last year, who's now the defensive coordinator in Atlanta. So Onyemata goes to Atlanta, reunites with Nielsen. Of course, Terry Fontenot is the GM in Atlanta, who was part of the Saints organization when they drafted Onyemata. So there's a lot of familiarity there with the coaching staff, the front office. They know him being in the division and everything, and they guaranteed him $24.5 million. So David Onyemata is going to be a member of the Atlanta Falcons. It didn't stop there, however. Shy Tuttle is also leaving New Orleans, but staying in the division. As Schefter reported, Shy Tuttle has reached an agreement with the Carolina Panthers on a 3-year, $19.5 million deal, which includes $13 million in guarantees at signing. So today, both David Onyemata and Shy Tuttle have agreed to deals to stay in the NFC South, leaving New Orleans with Atlanta and Carolina, respectively. If you're scoring at home, that means the Saints do not have any of their defensive linemen that were part of the rotation this past year currently under contract. Onyemata's going to Atlanta. Tuttle's going to Carolina. Kentavious Street is a free agent. Malcolm Roach is a free agent. You got nothing. So when I say defensive tackle is no longer just a need, it is not only a must, it is literally your number one priority. You don't have a defensive line. I mean, I'm laughing because it's just kind of comical at this point. And by the way, I don't want this to sound like sour grapes with the Onyemata news. But I'm actually okay. I had prepared myself for David Onyemata moving on. And while, of course, you want to keep the players that you drafted and developed, when I look at Onyemata, I see a guy at 30 years old that is aging. And the Saints have always had it as their policy. You'd rather get rid of a guy a year too soon than a year too late. And at times it bites you. Darren Sproles still had plenty left in the tank when they let him go, and he went to Philly. Malcolm Jenkins had plenty left in the tank when he, coincidentally, went to Philly, and ultimately they brought him back. But more often than not, the Saints have been right when they've let guys walk as opposed to overpaying to keep aging players. And when I look at Onyemata, he was a rookie in 2016 when they drafted him, and he played in 16 games, but he didn't really become a full-time starter until 2019. And he has been a full-time starter each of the last 4 seasons. Now, of course, in 2021, he only played in 11 games. He had to serve the suspension, the PED suspension, but came back this year, started all 17 games, had a career high in solo tackles with 25. He had 5 sacks, which was the second most of his career. So I know on one hand I'm saying I think he's an aging player, but he's coming off a really solid year. But I look at it in total. What's it going to cost to keep Onyemata for this next contract as he moves into his 30s? And then I look at the fact that, okay, yes, he had some numbers this past year, but what did it mean for the defense as a whole? The Saints' run defense dropped all the way to 24th in the NFL. Flatly, somebody has to make the tackle. Somebody is going to make plays. And is 5 sacks from the interior over a 17-game season enough to say that's the guy who we feel is our dominant interior player? Now, do I want David Onyemata on my team as part of my interior rotation? Absolutely I do. But do I want him on the roster at the price that Atlanta's willing to pay him? 3 years, $35 million? Probably not. Because I think you can get younger and you can get players just as productive as Onyemata cheaper. So, listen, there's clearly going to have to be a makeover at that position. I like David Onyemata. I like Shy Tuttle a lot. But those guys combined to be the interior of a defense that was 24th in the NFL against the run. That took a serious step back after guys like Sheldon Rankins and Malcolm Brown had left. You've seen that interior of the defense regress. So I'm good getting younger there. I'm good getting more financially prudent there on your defensive line as well, instead of overpaying for veteran players because you know them. So it's unsettling because you have to remake that position, but I'm okay with them going back to the drawing board because by and large the Saints have been able to find guys like Onyemata in round 4, like Shy Tuttle as an undrafted free agent. They've done a good job identifying those players, and I think I trust them to do it again. Now, where do they turn? Listen, every single mock draft you see heretofore had better have the Saints taking a defensive tackle at number 29. The most recent mock draft I saw today was at USA Today, and they've got the Saints at 29 taking Kalijah Cansey, who's a defensive tackle out of Pitt. I can't tell you I know a ton about him, but he's 6'1", 281, and he's a guy on the interior that can be an interior blow-up-the-launch-pad type guy. So I'm not telling you he's Aaron Donald coming from Pitt, who is, but that's an interior player where you desperately need it, and every single mock draft moving forward had better have the Saints taking defensive tackle at 29 because I can't see justification taking any other position at this point when you literally have no defensive tackles. So the Saints will be spenders in free agency at defensive tackle, and they are certainly going to use some of their draft capital. They have to make that position. Last year in their final 53, they kept 4 defensive tackles. You'll have some on the practice squad, no doubt, as well. They can rotate. But when you look at that defensive line, you may still lose Marcus Davenport in free agency. You've got Cam Jordan, Granderson. You hope Peyton Turner can amount to something. Tano Passanio is back, but those are your ends. You need interior players, and that's going to be it's a must. Giant target right now for the Saints as they move forward. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.